then what I'll do is I will speak into this, and then I will hand over to Dominic, and then it's a bit high for me. Wait, it goes right over my head. I could ask you to take your seats as quickly as possible, please. I can tell you there's a little breeze coming over here. It's a very, very nice part of the tent to be in. And I'm sure that you've probably found your way around already since you arrived in this beautiful, beautiful space. Portaloos are over there. Tents for the various breakout sessions are dotted around, and you should have a map on the back of your program. Otherwise, there are lots of helpful people wearing t-shirts who will be able to direct you. So if everybody, there's a few more seats up here if you want to make your way through. Okay, well, I can't do very much more than shout into the microphone, I'm afraid. I can come over here. Okay, let's try over here, which is a little bit tall. Let's try that. Is that better? Yay! Good. All right. So did you hear about the Portaloos? Yay! Did you hear about the breakout sessions and the map? Yes, good. Okay, well, welcome then. Goodness me, such a scandal, a catalogue of betrayal, lies and denials. People taking sides, spilling the beans, settling scores, and at least one career in tatters. And it's been in the headlines for weeks, given commentators and columnists enough material for several months. But that's enough about a daytime TV show. We're here for the serious business of politics. And it does seem as though the times we live in certainly require serious political discourse. The sort of discourse that puts party politics aside, embraces ideas, experience, innovation, and imagination. This is the Radix Big Tent annual event, away from the Westminster bubble, a different way to do politics, where people and communities engage with political leaders and can influence public policy. So the next 2 days is not just for or about politicians. There are business and community leaders, students, people from charities and trade unions, the public and private sectors, entrepreneurs from creative and technology backgrounds, people from local and national government, environmentalists and scientists. And as those of you who came to the last two festivals in Coventry and Bristol know, this event brings together people from all backgrounds and political affiliations, or none. But above all, this is a non-partisan event. Everyone is welcome, and it's great to see so many familiar faces and many new ones too. And what a magnificent setting. Thanks very much to the Dean of York Minster, the Very Reverend Dominic Barrington.
The late, great Desmond Tutu once remarked, actually I suspect he said it several times, that when people tell me that politics and religion don't mix, I ask them which version of the Bible they are reading. And I am delighted in the name of York Minster, therefore, to welcome you all to this fabulous environment for 2 days of really important discussions. I didn't know much about Big Tent until I arrived in York, which was only 7 months ago. So I'm still finding out an awful lot about the Minster, the city, and all sorts of other things. But the moment I discovered this event was going to be happening, I was incredibly excited. When you look at the kind of areas that are talked about and about which Big Tent has published, just looking at samples of titles, The Urgent Future of Constitutional Reform, Managing the Mental Health Crisis, Rebooting Capitalism. All of this is stuff which you will find talked about in the scriptures of all the great world faiths. All of these issues are to do with the dignity of the children of God, as I believe you all are, and you're welcome to disagree with that. All of it is about the dignity and the worth of creation. All of it is absolutely vital stuff. I came here 7 months ago after a 7-year exile. I was Dean of the Anglican Cathedral in Chicago, and I was able to watch close at hand how politics and religion can sit very badly alongside each other. That isn't the case in this country, and gathering here at Big Tent, I think speaks to the vital interface between politics and all sorts of other related social sciences and disciplines, religion, and the needs of the societies in which we live, and which in all sorts of different capacities, all of us gathered in this tent and the other tents that will be hosting events today, we are all called to serve these communities. As I say, I don't know as much as I should about this place. I was hastily texting my colleagues on the clergy team here saying, is this part of the Minster grounds consecrated? And I was told that probably not, because this wasn't an area we think which was a burial ground. I want to suggest that the discussions that bring you here and in which we're going to be engaged for the next 48 hours, you're helping to consecrate this ground and make it holy, because what we are doing through my lens is God's work. Somebody even more famous than Desmond Tutu, approximately 2,000 years before him, said, I came that they may have life and have it in its fullest abundance. And it seems to me that that would be, albeit a religious tagline, a very good tagline for what Big Tent is about, the abundance of life, which from all sorts of different political perspectives and professional perspectives, we're going to be discussing. So an enormous welcome to the grounds of York Minster, consecrated or not. I hope that you are all going to have a fabulous and thought-provoking 2 days here, and I am delighted that this event is happening here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dominic. That was delightful, and I think it's the first time we've been invited to consecrate a ground as part of our proceedings over the next 2 days. Now, I'm hoping very much that by the magic of technology, we might find Simon Clark on Zoom behind me. Hello, Simon. Now, he assures me he's not driving. I did ask him, but he put his hands up and said no, but that doesn't tell you anything, does it really? I think he didn't want to come here because Simon is 6'7" and I'm just over 5 foot, and we would have looked like a comedy duo on the stage. But nevertheless, we are delighted to have you with us by Zoom, Simon. And Simon is the MP for Middlesbrough South and East Cleveland since 2017. He is, of course, now Sir Simon Clark. Congratulations on that. He was Levelling Up Secretary under Liz Truss for about a month, previously Chief Secretary to the Treasury, a Minister of State for Regional Growth and Local Government. And Simon, you've been a long-time advocate of regeneration, both locally and nationally. So this conference, which is all about regeneration, must be something that you'd like to be here for in person. Simon, can you hear us? Oh dear, this is one of those comedy moments, isn't it? Simon Clark, can you hear us? Can you see us even? Tom, what's happening? Simon? Hello, Simon? Right, I think in order to save his embarrassment for the time being, whilst Tom sorts out what's going on, I'm going to skip away from this, and I'm going to ask Sir Tim Smith to come to the stage to be slightly ahead of schedule, but to deliver the first keynote of the afternoon. And many of you will know that Sir Tim is the founder of the Eden Project, multi-award winning, and Eden Project North, which is taking shape, which I hope you'll tell us all about. Tim Smith, thank you so much.
Hello. Can you hear me without a microphone? Because I can't stand microphones. Okay, well, look, very nice to be here, and how good to be talking about regeneration. It would be nice if it didn't feel as if it was somehow a newly discovered art form. My understanding of regeneration is that people fuck a place up, then they go away, then they believe that everything's died, and then somehow there's a moment of elevation where people come in, put a bit of money in, a little bit of decor, and then away you go. My personal experience of regeneration is that my job is twofold. My job is I am an exorcist. No, I'm not joking. I go to places, we're going, obviously Mid-Cornwall, Morecambe, Dundee, the earthquake zone of Christchurch in New Zealand, the giant coal mine of Anglesey in Australia, and Qingdao, which is our biggest project, which is in China. And we go to these places and we start with what are called meanwhile projects, where people start to get the hang of the fact that you could make places beautiful. The moment you start to make places beautiful, people start to believe that there might be a sea change. The greatest thing that happened to me in terms of doing the Eden project, obviously, I had restored before that a place some of you may have heard of called the Lost Gardens of Helligan. And that gave me the understanding of how if you remove technical language from something and allow it to become an experience of shared beauty, if that's the way of putting it, was that hundreds of thousands of people come. And if you were to ask me, my proudest thing other than the birth of my children would be that more than 400 people have asked to have their ashes scattered at Helligan. It's a tremendous privilege. But what I learned when I started doing the Eden project was to listen to people. I went to Wales to speak to the people who had built the Ebbw Garden Festival, which had not been a great success. And these civil servants were so brave and so honest about what they'd done that had messed things up, that it made a complete difference to what I did in Cornwall. They said, first of all, the biggest mistake they made in Ebbw was they went there and they saw the Wales of their imagination, not the actual Wales that was in front of them. Which, when you think about it, that is a very interesting observation, because they saw the Wales of, if you like, big coal, big steel, and so on. But by that time already, Wales had become, and there are others here I know who know more about Wales than I do, but it had become a place where there were an enormous amount of small businesses, 2 people and a dog, and there was no capacity to actually bulk up what you do. So they said that was the first major problem we had. And the second thing was that, not having realized that, we then tried to make the money spent in Wales, and we couldn't because no one could spend it. So it was a disaster. Most of the money for the Ebbw Garden Festival hemorrhaged out. Not through any evil intent, it was just to do with the organisation. So when we raised the money to build the Eden project in Cornwall, we began procuring right from the start. I'm very political, I'm a capitalist, but I believe that capitalism only works with a moral compass. And if you don't have a moral compass, you really screw it up. So what we did was, we started procuring the food for Eden that was going to open 2 years later, with that 2-year gap. To give you some idea, Eden consumes in 3 months all the cheese that is made in Cornwall. Not now it doesn't, but then. Yeah. Same with ice cream, same with a whole bunch of stuff. So you need to go to those businesses and set them up. And then the next thing you need to understand is, and why most people who say they are business people are not and betray their local people, is that if you want small businesses to become big businesses and local, you need to understand that if you are going to ask ice cream makers to make organic ice cream for you, they cannot grow unless you give them long-term contracts. But if you are a business person, you're told that short-term contracts are good business. So you need to offer 3-year contracts. I'm being very factual because what I want to talk about is regeneration. It isn't about hippie shit and talking about stuff in the corridors of London. It's about getting dirt under your fingernails and understanding how business works. So we offered 3-year contracts. It was very political. We said after 18 months, if your company is waste neutral, we'll give you a contract for another 18 months. And this continues forward. It's really important that you incentivize the use of business to create a really beneficial outcome. And this has worked really, really well for us. And so today we have 1,200 suppliers at the Eden Project in Cornwall. We have over 1 million people a year come to us. and we're in the middle of the boondocks. You know we are. Why do they come? In the loud world of today, we don't have the bravery for actually the quality of something. Everybody tells me, why weren't you in London? Why didn't you go to that London town? You'd have made a lot more money. No, you wouldn't. Because you'd have been full of people consuming like pigs at a trough. You'd have been another thing to do, an entertainment. Now, when you come to Cornwall, as would have been the case in Wales, as will be the case in Morecambe, it becomes, in effect, a pilgrimage. The journey in itself is almost like a commitment to go to somewhere special that becomes, over a period of time, if you're lucky, it has a sort of sacred power. I use the word in a secular way, it has a sacred power. And then you've got to continue with doing the stuff. But the danger for the Eden Project, for example, at a time unbelievably exciting. Let me tell you, all of you who think that we're going to hell in a handcart, I shouldn't, as an environmentalist, be saying, you have no idea. The world that is coming at us over the horizon is going to be more life-changing for everybody in this room than at any time since probably 1660. And the biggest problem we have in our culture is that we have a culture dominated by middle-aged, grumpy men. And those grumpy men like to read tabloid newspapers that tell you we're going to hell in a handcart. And we were never told that the reason we need to believe we're going to hell in a handcart is because we've never had it so good. And as a species, we need to be trained to fear the future so that we can actually be resilient. In 15 years from now, Yorkshire will be independent. Yeah, it will be independent, as will so many places in our country. And why? Is because something which is about muscular localism. We are sponsored by a company you will know called Volvo, right? Volvo actually are planning to have no supply chain 15 years from now. They will be printing their cars roughly wherever you live. We will have renewable energy freely available or cheaply available throughout our country. Oh, what a fantasist you're all saying, because you can listen to people like Boris Johnson, one of the only men this year I swore at. No, see, we're living in an age of brilliant technology, and in case you doubt me, at Eden we have dug a hole 5.3 kilometers deep because we can. But why would we do that when you have had to hear year after year after year those self-same middle-aged men telling you, many of them supported by people in the fossil fuel industry, that you can't do this, you can't do that, it's unaffordable. You know, it's a bit like selling you clean spring water over here and cyanide water over here. The cyanide water is cheaper, you better have that. The truth is, the price of drilling is plummeting now, as we know that over the next short while, fossil fuel drilling, the demand for it is going to go down. So when scientists tell you you can't do deep geothermal, which we're doing in Eden, hey, let me interrupt myself. Do you know what I'm doing at 8:30 on Monday morning? The coolest thing ever. I'm turning on a tap. And you know what's going to come out of my tap? Water. Isn't that exciting too? Eh? Hey, and you know what else I'm going to be doing? This tap is going to be turned on, and the temperature of the water that's coming out is 187 degrees centigrade. That water is going to heat the whole of the Eden project. That water is going to enable us to breed tons and tons and tons and tons, like we do a lot of tons, right, of prawns, of algae, of seaweed. Why are we doing this? Because we know that all of us need some people who are doing exciting stuff, which makes us look up at the future that still remains ours to make. We've put £2.2 billion into the Cornish economy. And we're not curious. We mess up like everybody else. We do know, though, that to get lots and lots of people to come to a place like Cornwall, it's got to be a bit ooh and a bit ah, hasn't it? It's got to be a bit rock and roll. You've got to be just on the right edge of science. But people who are on the wrong side of science, they cause terminal shock because they're so boring. No, what we all need is, wow, it's great to be alive, isn't it? And you look at really crap faces and you go, bring it on. Give me your poison. That's what we do. That's why we're working in Morecambe. Is it any wonder? No, you laugh. Morecambe Community Hall was built in 1868. Between 1868 and last year, at no time ever had all its elected officials been in the same room together at the same time. Until we talked about Eden Morecambe. When Lancashire County Council had our planning application put in front of them, I wonder whether you could guess how many objectors. How is it possible that a project of over £100 million built on the seafront next to a listed building could have no objectors? Zero. The reason is the people in Morecambe are waking up to the idea that maybe we don't live somewhere crap. Maybe when we lift up our eyes, we see the Lake District. Maybe we see weather systems forming. Maybe we see the currents coming in at a speed faster than a racehorse can gallop. Maybe, just maybe, these guys are speaking the truth. Maybe they will create cooperatives with the farms and the hillsides and make sure that every damn piece of food that is eaten in that place will be produced locally. Maybe they believe, because they've seen that it happened in Cornwall, that the jobs will not hemorrhage out of Morecambe. They will all be people in Morecambe trained because we start in time. And we'll be opening in end of 2025, 2026. And it will be very cool. We got an environment centre in Dubai, and I was asked to get in for Expo 2020, and I was asked by the Sheikh, Sheikh Mohammed's sister, who was organising it, to come and look at what has been designed. And she said, "What do you think of our environment centre?" I said, "It's really shit." She said, "I was told you were frank." And I said, "What do you need?" He said, "It's hot. You recognise in Dubai it's hot. Right? It's hot. Do you really want to go into a house, a big building, right, where you see scientists given plaques which say, here's a polar bear on an ice cube? Good. Do you really want to hear you're going to Helena Hancock? Do you really? Most people who go in there will know that. So you know what the centerpiece is? I can hardly bring myself to share this with you. This school. Just imagine you walk into a room and it's dark. And inside it is an aquarium, and it's dark. And in that aquarium are some oysters and there's some mussels and some crabs. There's like 100 people in the room, and they're saying, "What the hell are we doing in this dark room?" Then we turn on a very low gauge, the infrared, and you watch 100 people behave as if they've just discovered a new religion. Do you know what they're seeing? They're seeing in the gloaming the heartbeats of all these creatures that they've never seriously taken account of before. Do you know how cool that is to see a mussel's heartbeat going? It's like our heartbeat. You see a crab with 2 heartbeats. It is a spiritual experience. And that's what we together, all of us, have got to master. It's the realization that when you look at these damn trees outside, the grass, and you look at yourself in the mirror, we are all made of the same stuff. Carl Sagan said it in 1969 in the Blue Dot moment. We are star stuff. Hair, the musical, said they're stardust. You know, we're living an amazingly exciting time. Now, with our geothermal project, it's going to give us energy. So I've probably only got about 3 minutes to tell you about how I see the future. I've told you about Morecambe enough, haven't I? It's going to be amazing. It's really small. People are going to go there and they're going to go, wow, like theatre. You're going to walk away with 7 things you will never forget for the rest of your life. We don't want to give you information which bores you to the back teeth or science you can't understand. We want you to actually look at everything as if it was for the first time and realize what a miracle life itself is. It is astonishing that we're robbed by the background noise of ordinariness. So Morecambe is one thing. Our project in Dundee in a gasworks. mendable, is redeemable. And if you doubt me, how many people in this room, just to please dare put your hand up if it's true, how many watch the repair shop? You see? You know it's true. You know it's true. We love healing. We love mending. And if we can start a culture of healing and mending, we will actually create the right model for regeneration. If we can harness business in such a way that it behaves with a moral compass and a forethought, we can regenerate anything. But I said I was going to tell you about 15 years from now. 15 years from now, okay, you're not going to like this bit. I reckon there's going to be 30 million people around Calais trying to come to England. Because we're going to so screw up our international relationships that actually a lot of places are going to suffer really bad. You've got two calls. Are you as a nation going to become more and more racist and difficult and, curmudgeonly? Or are you going to say, hey, we know how to grow shit. We really know how to grow stuff. Fun up this morning, I had a great opportunity to go around Ferrer just up the road. I don't know whether you've ever been to Ferrer. It is a very, very cool place with 400 scientists, all of whom are excited about the future. So just imagine, we could imagine building things and actually producing enough food to feed everybody. We would actually be resilient. You add to that, dig in a few holes, Mr. Johnson. We can do this stuff. A few holes, a bit of solar, a bit of deep geothermal. We're now independent. You know what you can do when you've got a lot of heat in a big hole? You can actually then have greenhouses. And there is nothing, absolutely nothing, we could suddenly not grow. Nothing. And we would price it because it would be us that had dug those holes. And of course, you're trusting me now, aren't you? Because you're talking to the first man you've ever met that is going to turn on a tap on Monday morning. And seriously, I am being a bit light-hearted about it, but I get so depressed talking to people who think we're doomed. When actually the great challenge for humans is that we don't get out of bed in the morning unless we feel it's existential, generally. And I think that is going to see this muscular localism that's going to see Yorkshire independence, going to see your cars made down the roads, going to see food grown all around you, you're going to see cooperatives at farms. You're going to see the end of supermarkets as you know them. There will be supermarkets, but everything will be provided locally. You're also going to see all your energy provided at a price which is affordable. You're going to see with Starlink and things like that, the ability to have the quality of communications that you might have in London town where you are here. In short, there is going to be nothing at all worth having that you cannot have where you live without damaging the planet. So welcome to a new era. We're not unique. We just got a talent at Eden for making friends because we think it's really fun looking optimistic into the future, and we hope that some of you will join us on the journey. So I wish you luck with the rest of today's conference. There are lots of other good things going on. Have I spoken the right length of time, or have I?
You can keep going for a couple of minutes if you want to, because it's inspirational. It's lovely, Tim.
What do you mean the other guy hasn't turned up?
No, not at all. He's still stuck in a car, I think. You got another couple of minutes, but you are a middle-aged man.
Yeah.
How is it that you're not grumpy?
I'm not.
You're angry instead.
No, I'm actually not. I'm mock angry. I'm mock angry. I do get angry, and this is not meant to put up past political. I do get angry with what I perceive to be lazy establishment, regardless of political parties, who, if Eisenbach, Kingdom Brunel was alive, he'd be just aghast at the lack of ambition we have. I think we need to learn to raise our eyes to a distant horizon. I think collectively we're suffering from almost a group PTSD. Isn't it amazing that we're in Westminster, so I can actually say this, right? That all the religions of the people in this country, if you look at them, there will be a number of things about equity and whatever they will share, won't there? We know that they're set up to be about how we behave. What on earth are we going through in our political world when all of the things that we think are actually noble and aspirational and potentially able to be deliverable are being made as if they're something that a dirty secret that we can't actually live up to those aspirations? And you know what? One of the really interesting things is, I bet you if I gave you each a piece of paper and a pen and I asked you to write down the names of the 3 people that other people might have heard of that you really admire. I would bet my life that the majority of the people on that list will have something in common. You know what it'll be? They're not for sale. They're people who believe in things, and whether you believe in what they believe in or not, you do trust that they do believe that, which is strangely is comforting too, even if they're maniac on. I won't root toot on, because there are so many good things, but sometimes once you start on another theme, you know, it's getting hot, you probably need to go like that and get the deodorant spray on and all that sort of stuff. So thank you for listening to me, and I hope you'll take part in all the workshops and ask all the participants awkward questions. Oh yes, one last thing, sorry. One last thing is this, that during COVID, I don't know whether any of you share this view, I'm going to a bit dangerous territory here, but during COVID, I was standing next to my neighbours doing the clapping for the nurses and everything. We started talking about, this was in Wadebridge in Cornwall, we were talking about the fact that we couldn't afford the things in Wadebridge that we all said we wanted. And the conversation then went to, well, what are you doing? You could actually cut the hedge, you could remove the Tesco's trolleys from the river, you could do this, you could do that, you could value engineer what we all said. Having trashed politicians, and I know there are many honourable politicians in the room today, what I would say, we, the rest of us, have got to grow up. We've got to really grow up. To stand around asking people to tell us that we can have what we want when we're living in a world that is completely unaffordable. So we're actually saying to people, lie to us, baby, lie. It's not grown up, is it? We've got to see a birth of a new philosophy in politics, which is about citizenship. We've actually got to take control of our destiny by actually working out what is absolutely essential. What can we in our communities do? And that's why this muscular localism is so important. That's what I want to say, really. I actually think we're at the birth of something really, really important, but it requires a courage that if we stretch out and we are brave, people will remember this in 100 years' time, that there was this moment. I didn't mean to spit on you, it's all right. No, I've completely lost my friend now, and I've lost the will to live.
Tim, thank you. I think you've given a lot of us the will to get involved and live. That was brilliant. Tim Swick, thank you very much. Right, pretend you weren't here 20 minutes ago and that you've never heard of Simon Clarke, because I'm now going to reintroduce him. Simon, can you hear us and see us?
I can see you, and I can hear you a bit faintly, but I can hear you, yes.
Marvellous, good. Well, we're very glad to have you with us. I don't know if you heard anything of Tim Smith and what he was saying just now, but he's been talking about muscular localism, and I think that ties into regeneration. I mean, you have been, I'm not going to do the same introduction again because they know who you are, they know you're very tall, and they know you were levelling up secretary for not very long. But we want to talk about regeneration, and this is something that is very close to your heart.
That's right, and thank you. And first and foremost, apologies to everyone for the difficulties with the sound earlier. I hope you can hear me now. This is an agenda which, as you rightly say, is extremely important. It goes to the heart of so much of what our government is trying to do. And it matters to me as a constituency MP as well. I represent Middlesbrough South and East Cleveland. Teesside is at the heart of so much of the hard work that's going on to try and make sure that we deliver meaningful regeneration in a way which creates jobs and homes and opportunity and is the social and economic driver of this government.
Now, you have said in the past that towns and coastal communities and rural areas haven't shared the benefits of economic growth experienced in other parts of the UK. People who live in those areas know that all too well. How do we change it, though, for the view from Westminster? Oh, he's gone to sleep.
I think there's a huge opportunity for us to unlock the thwarted potential of areas, as you say, which haven't benefited from some of the opportunities that we've seen in particular in some of our big cities, and we have to make sure that those benefits are spread more widely. And that does mean upfront investment. So we need to be clear that many of the Treasury's models over many years have compounded success. That is to say, the return on investment has shown up as the highest in the areas which are already economically highly successful. And that, over time, has led to a worsening gap between areas where the figures haven't stacked up in that way. And so the Prime Minister, when he was the Chancellor, quite rightly instigated major changes to what the Treasury called the Green Book. The Green Book being the government the document that governs the investment rationale, which allows investments to be considered and then taken forward by the civil service. Those reforms to the Green Book mean that we are now able to make these investments in areas where they can make a profound difference, but where the numbers aren't as strong as they would be in, say, Cambridge or Milton Keynes or the major centres of growth in the south of the country. So that is a huge step forward. Some of it is also clearly about making sure that you have a process to engage the public, and our levelling up funds have been colossally important, I think, in allowing public engagement with this process, so that when we get money into areas like Teesside, but obviously huge swathes of the north and the Midlands, and indeed some deprived corners of the south, that it's spent in a way which actually meets local people's priorities. And that can cover obviously a range of key infrastructure.
Well, one of the things you mentioned about levelling up funds,
a number of vital projects deliver by 2024. Sorry, I missed that.
No, one of the points you mentioned about levelling up fund, a lot of this is money that has to be bid for. So if you're a local authority, for instance, that is well resourced and have got people who can write jolly good bids, you've got a lot more chance of getting something than the council that's struggling, that is underfunded, under-resourced, and is concentrating on more important issues on the day-to-day.
Well, that's it's a totally valid concern to raise. What I would say is that the Department for Levelling Up recognises that not all councils are equally resourced or equally expert in the business of making these applications. We think it is very important, and I agree with the department completely on this, that councils should make the case for this investment, but that where authorities do lack expertise in this or don't have the bodies, extra departmental support is available. And so the teams in the department will work closely with authorities to make sure that bids can first come to fruition, but then critically, if they are lacking in some way, that they can be supported to the point where they can succeed. And certainly it's the case that we've achieved, I think, a good geographical split of those awards over the last few years. And I think there's obviously more to do when the third and final instalment of the Levelling Up Fund in this Parliament is made over the course of the year ahead.
But it's not just about funding, is it? It's about, I think, what Tim Smith was referring to just now, this muscular localism, and that's about, you know, the power within local government, within local communities. It's about stopping the exodus of young people and talent. It's about the community churn, which leads to instability. It's about house building. It's about education. It's about employment prospects. So where do all of those things fit in?
Yes. Well, it's partly, I think, about creating a virtuous circle. So if you look at I'll go back to my home area of Teesside. The cycle of decline is absolutely as self-fulfilling as a cycle of recovery. So if you start to get the good jobs and the opportunities which anchor, exactly as you say, the young people who will otherwise leave, and the talent drain that otherwise ensues, so you start to get social healing. And this is a long and complex, there are notions, I fear, when it comes to transforming the economic and social cycle in many of these left behind communities. And this would be, I suspect, testified to by many of those involved in the regeneration of many of our major northern cities over the last 20 or 30 years. The success of modern day Leeds or modern day Manchester has not come overnight, and it has not been a straightforward linear process. But if you get the core investors coming in, if you get the anchor infrastructure projects which attract those investors, then in turn, so you start to see people moving into an area rather than moving out. And that leads to a range of benefits. It's not just the people who come to do the jobs, but it's their partners who may well, for example, the teachers and the doctors who improve an area, and so you start to reverse that ratchet, which otherwise, I'm afraid, kicks in communities whereby anyone who can leaves and traps those left behind in an ever worsening spiral of decline.
Now, Simon, you've mentioned Teesside several times, and that is a project that I know you're very proud of, but it has not been without controversy, not least because it's a sort of a private-public partnership. A lot of public money has gone into it, but the private investors have made an awful lot of money. There have been criticisms about lack of transparency and the estimated cost of cleaning up the former steelworks at £500 million. I mean, what's your answer to those critics?
Yeah, well, this is a debate which has gone from the local to the national over recent weeks, and I think it is really important to establish why this matters quite so much. The former steelworks site at Teesside is an area bigger than Gibraltar. It is the largest brownfield regeneration site anywhere, not just in the UK, but in Western Europe at the moment. And it is an extraordinary opportunity for us to do something very special in the Northeast, akin in scale perhaps to the former Longbridge plant in Birmingham. And what is happening there is complicated by the fact that this site is very substantially contaminated by 100+ years of heavy industry. And the costs associated with its cleanup, as you say, are north of £500 million. Billion. And the reality is, they're getting on to £500 million worth of associated cost. The government has put in 246 million, but I think quite rightly, from the outset, the business case involved the Tees Valley Combined Authority partnering with the private sector to make sure that this land is remediated in a way which delivers the best outcome for the community, but also a fair outcome for the taxpayer. And that partnership has been in place for the last 3 years. Now, there are always those who are going to cast aspersions on public-private partnerships simply because they're allergic to the concept. But there have been specific allegations made about this partnership, which have been the subject of fierce debate in the House of Commons. I won't go into the bitter minutiae of this, except to say that there is an independent inquiry which the government has instigated, not because it believes there is a problem that needs to be addressed here, but rather because the allegations are so serious and so potentially damaging to inward investment into Teesside that they need to be addressed by people who can opine definitively. That inquiry will report in July, so there isn't going to be a long hiatus here. We expect this to report before the end of July, and I'm confident when it does, it will show that the arrangements that are in place are totally in line with normal best practice within local government. But that is a matter which, as I say, isn't for me to determine, or for government indeed to determine. It is ultimately now for this inquiry to determine. I look forward to their report coming out soon, precisely because this is just so important to the wider community on Teesside.
Thank you. Now we've only got a couple of minutes left, Simon, and I think people here looking at you in the car wanting to shout, "Are we there yet, Dad? Are we there yet?" Because it feels, where are you going? I shouldn't ask, really, should I? You were at the forefront of a cross-party letter some years ago, signed by more than 130 MPs supporting net zero emissions. How confident are you that net zero is still on the agenda of this government?
Extremely. Look, there is a massive opportunity for the UK associated with net zero. We often talk about this agenda in terms only of its costs, which I think is extremely short-sighted. The reality is that the UK has many good strategic reasons to want to decarbonise. Quite apart from the environmental case, there is obviously also a energy security case, which has been greatly increased in significance by events surrounding Russia and Ukraine. We must never again be as vulnerable as we have been to the kind of blackmail that Putin has tried to exact. But this is also an enormous commercial opportunity. It's not just about mitigating those risks. It's about realizing the huge commercial opportunities that would come from our leading the world in a whole swathe of technologies, whether that be carbon capture and storage, which is going to be huge for Scotland, for Humberside, for Teesside, for Merseyside. That is to say, the process of sequestering carbon below the ocean in secure storage there, in the same way that we took hydrocarbons out from those spaces. The hydrogen industry, which is just in its infancy, but which has huge potential to change our energy resilience. Clearly, onshore and offshore wind technologies, where the UK really does have a major competitive advantage already, are also there, and nuclear. So I'm confident that net zero is something which the government is absolutely determined to build on. We've got very clear and exciting plans to continue to make sure the UK is at the head of the pack on this. So we shouldn't forget, and this is something which I think does get lost in our public discourse, of the G7 economies since 1990, while growing our economy the most in that time. That is an extraordinary achievement under governments of both colours. And it goes to show, actually, that there is no conflict, no inherent tension between our doing the right thing for the environment and the right thing for our economy.
Simon, thank you very much for joining us. I'm assuming you're driving back to your constituency, but I must ask you.
Indeed, and my apologies again.
Are you going to be in Parliament on Monday? Anything happening?
I will be in Parliament on Monday, but I think in many ways, like so many of us, I am very keen that we get back to the key policy issues, which in the end are what matter far more to all of us, and clearly to my constituents, than the who's in, who's out game at Westminster. So lots to do. Very grateful to this event for showcasing a range of policy issues which we need to grapple with. And my sincere thanks for sticking with me in terms of my connection. I'm very grateful to have had the chance to be with you today.
I promise next year at Radix Big Tent, we're going to have carpool karaoke. You and me in a bubble car. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Thank you.
Right, well, we got through that eventually. I'm sure you're all desperate for a little breakout, if you haven't already broken out in sweat. Now, you probably know which events you are going to, and you have got maps if you've got the little program thing like this, and there are volunteers on hand to point you in the right direction. If you haven't had enough of me, I'll be back at 4 o'clock with David Cleveley. But for now, enjoy the rest of the afternoon. Thank you.